Welcome to the first episode of At the Table by Women of StoneX. In line with this year's International Women's Day and Gift to Gain, I'm joined by a formidable group of women from across the StoneX business. So let's just start by introducing ourselves. We'll start here.
Thank you. I'm Shelly, and I've been with StoneX for around 2.5 years now as a senior early career recruiter.
I'm Lorna Summerfield. I joined quite recently through the RJO acquisition as the CFO for EMEA.
I'm Antigoni. I'm Sales Prime Services in our Securities division. And I've been with StoneX for about 7 years. I was trying to calculate that.
I'm Shriya. I've been with StoneX for, I want to say, 1.5 years, and I'm a rates trader in the fixed income division.
Lovely. And I'm Fiona. I am working here at the StoneX TV Centre. I've also do the self-directed analysis. So, well, thank you very much for joining us. I guess, first of all, let's just start with sort of where we are and where we've come from. Most of us don't end up where we expected from our early 20s. How did you find yourselves in your career?
I started when I was 21 at StoneX, and I'm turning 29 this year. So I would say my career journey has been within the house of StoneX. From correspondent banking and always having a tie there, and being sort of relationship management focused, to the past 18 months being with securities now on our prime services team in sales. So I would say that it's felt quite natural and organic, although I have been supported by StoneX to do the necessary exams for my current role. But it was also a bit of a leap of faith that, you know, not to stay potentially in one box sort of thing. But yeah, I must give kudos to StoneX for enabling me and empowering me on my career journey so far.
It's interesting you say about not staying in a box, because I think that really resonates. Most of my career has been in finance, but I've definitely done quite a few varied roles, you know, over the years, and many more years than you have. And I think for me, it was saying yes to lots of opportunities. I think if it's something new and you can learn and it's a challenge, you know, I was more than happy to sort of throw myself in at the deep end and take a bit of a chance with that. But it definitely paid off. And I think being able to do that in the same organisation, you see the same company through lots of different lenses, which I think gives you a different insight and perspective.
It's given me a well-rounded sort of experience of StoneX, I guess, but also StoneX has grown so much. So, like, a couple of fun facts that I know is that we're like Fortune 42 ranked, which when I started we were about 150 people in London. So I feel like I've grown and StoneX has grown
Together.
My career journey started off very differently. I started off studying computer science and realized that this is absolutely not for me, because I was missing the human connection and human interaction. So the love or a passion for talent acquisitions really started when I was being a candidate. I was on the other side of the table, and I was really fascinated, you know, by the confidence that the recruiters possess, and the way they give an opportunity to the candidates to display their wealth of knowledge that they possess, and, you know, bring or provide that kind of an open platform. So I was like, yeah, I can be on the other side of the table too, and that would also help me or talk to people.
No, completely. That's exactly right. I mean, it's so interesting when you see that, how you don't necessarily end up where you think you were going to go. I mean, like, you studying something completely different to where you ended up. I mean, I found I was similar to you in the sense I had quite an organic, natural movement between where I first started in City Index, which was taken over by StoneX several years ago, and sort of client services, moved to trading, moved to sales, ended up in analysis. So again, sort of getting a good breadth across all the different sectors of the business. What about you?
I actually think it's interesting to talk about where we thought we were going to end up and where we did end up. I'm American, and I grew up on a lot of American pop culture. So there were moments in my life where I thought I wanted to be a writer like Carrie Bradshaw from Sex and the City. There were moments where I thought I want to be a lawyer like Elle Woods in Legally Blonde. And then there were moments where I really wanted to be like a vampire slayer like Buffy. And maybe I have a skill set for all those things. If there were vampires to slay, I haven't tested that one out. But it's interesting that the career opportunity that you decide to take when you're studying in college or university builds on some of the skills that you could have developed, not all of them. We all probably have more skills than we give ourselves credit for, but we've chosen to develop a particular path in financial services, which maybe relies on human interaction a different way, technical skills a different way. And I think that's beautiful because none of us could have imagined if we chose what we were going to be when we were, 15 or 20, and then played that story out, if it would have ended up right here. Probably not, most of us would say. And I think that's part of the journey, right? We chose a skill set, or maybe it fell down upon us and we built on it. And that's where we've ended up. And there's probably so many different trajectories we could have taken. But I think the cool thing about being at StoneX is you get to wear many different hats. It's a constantly evolving company. So even if it's a skill set that you didn't actively practice and try to improve, it might be one that draws on like a different career trajectory, one that you would have taken if you were, say, a writer or a vampire slayer, and you get to bring that into your job at StoneX as one of the many hats you get to wear. So I think it's pretty cool to end up not quite where you expect it to be.
Yeah. And just drawing on that, I know for a fact that there are so many people, in front office roles or trading roles or sales roles, for example, that, myself, I studied literature, and so did my colleague Dominic on the desk, and we're both in sales for prime services, catering for hedge funds. Like, isn't it? It's just crazy to me that, people will study academically, like Shelly said, and draw on different skill sets then when they get into the workplace. And how, things don't necessarily go the way that, a young person might plan in their head, but it feels right for you if you're in the right organisation, perhaps.
I think you make a discovery along the way, and you discover yourself, and you don't realize that what skill set you actually possess. So it's a journey, exploration journey, I would say, and then you build on your skills. Skill set as per whatever roles you are in.
I think, as you pointed out, is having that open mindset to saying yes when something comes across your path and you think, oh, not sure, can I, but just jump in and see.
Give it a go.
Give it a go,
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I guess just sort of turning the topic towards mentorship and in line with the International Women's Day's theme and Give to Gain, let's discuss mentorship. I mean, many of you have been mentors yourself. What advice would you give to someone who wants a mentor but doesn't know where or how to start to ask?
I'm sure, Shelley, in your role, you've got so much more knowledge of the actual official schemes and programmes that we have. I know there are a few, some from Women of StoneX, perhaps, and one for early careers. Yes. But I would say I also have friends. They have internal mentors, but they also, which I don't personally right now, I have friends who have external mentors, which work really well for them as well. So I think just ask maybe colleagues or even friends if they're in a similar kind of industry to you, if they have one and how they went about sourcing one.
Yeah, I think informal mentorship has always been perhaps more successful for me. In a company that I worked for a long time ago, and there were a group of us that were at a similar level in our careers. We were from different departments across the organisation, but that peer group, because we were all facing sort of similar stages in our career development, was actually really powerful. And I think that was really helpful and useful at the time. And I think to the same, sometimes having an external mentor can be really useful because they can give you a really different perspective on different situations and how you might have approached them. And especially if it was perhaps outside of this industry, that can be quite powerful and insightful.
Yeah, and as Antigoni said, I think from StoneX, formal ways of getting mentorship at StoneX, we run a global mentoring program, for all employees. So there are a set number of people who have put themselves to be mentors. So there is a long list of people who have volunteered themselves. So people can actually choose as per their own development goals and try and find who would be the right mentor for them. So more details can be found on the StoneX Hub page under Human Resources and Learning and Development. So that's one I would really encourage all StoneX employees to leverage. Secondly, I think Women of StoneX is also running a program which is called Rising Star for Women who are in the early career stages. So that's something that we have launched, I think, last year, and there is a small cohort that we have. So they are receiving their mentorship and they're trying and meet their development goals. Third thing, from my role perspective, because I run early career talent programs at StoneX to recruit university students to build that talent, pipeline for future talent needs for the business. The students, when they join us on an internship, they are given a mentor, and that mentor is primarily next level to the managers. So manager, of course, is a mentor anyway, but there is a formal hat that we have given to a person who would be supporting this student or an intern on the day-to-day basis. So these are the formal kind of programs or initiatives that people can leverage at StoneX to meet their development goals.
Had a formal mentor arrangement at one point in my career, and career development isn't linear, and you can plateau, and I think this was at that point in time it was really helpful for me to kind of take stock of what was working well, what I needed to do differently, and how I might kind of navigate a change, and not so much changing in the role or career, but just a change in thinking about the sort of leader that I wanted to be going forward. So I think there are a time and a place when a more formal arrangement works, but for largely it was more informal. And finding role models and building that rapport and
I must say I was part of the first cohort of mentees when StoneX launched the mentoring program. It was about 3 or maybe 4 years ago now, and as I said previously, I was in the payments division, and the mentor that I was matched with, because you kind of had to give a bit about you, and like Lorna said, you had to explain sort of what you want to get out of it, and that was part of the prerequisite. And I knew I wanted one because I was still junior, but I had been at StoneX for enough amount of time, I felt, and I feel quite dedicated, obviously, to this day, to the company. But I just wanted to maximise my experience of what I could give and also get out of my career journey. And who I was matched to was a fixed income trader, head of fixed income trading at the time, so part of securities, and that was my first, I guess, foray in, and maybe insight into just another perspective. And it did stick with me. The mentor himself, it wasn't a lady, and it worked. It was brilliant. But the way we were matched was based on our work ethic and our personalities, and I got so much out of that. But it was also sort of I guess, the first kind of seed planted that securities could also be quite good for me.
Yeah, that worked out so well.
Yeah,
that worked well.
What about you, Shriya? Did you have any experience with mentorship?
Not formally, but I agree with you, Lorna, that a lot of the beauty is in the informal connection, because I think stamping the word mentor on something can make it too rigid, but there's a lot of advice being given and taken every single day. And I think a good example is the summer intern program, right, Shelly? We're all working together to give these interns an experience of what working with us on a trading desk at StoneX might be like. We're giving advice. We're also learning from them, I will say, because a lot of changes in AI are happening so quickly. that I need to keep up. And it's so great to have someone who's doing it as part of their coursework tell me this is a cool new thing you can do. It'll make your day so much easier. So it's a back and forth, but it's not labeled anything formally. Yeah. You're just trusting each other to further your careers and your knowledge. And I think the connection is really important. Actually, I think the intern that you were mentoring, Tiggy, I remember what stands out to me is over lunch one day, she asked me about where to best buy work clothes. And I was like, that is exactly the kind of thing you should be asking from your mentor or people that you're seeking advice from, because you might not be able to ask that from your boss. I mean, you could try, but I don't know about you, how much your boss would be able to advise on fashion. But I absolutely loved it. I was like, oh my God, let me break down all the best places to buy work clothes. Like, here's all the organic cotton, and here's when the sales are on, and make sure you get this, and buy lots and lots of tights. And it was just such a great conversation. And again, it wasn't bound by that formality of like a mentor-mentee relationship, but that's exactly what was going on. So I hope conversations like that continue to happen in the formal setting as well. But I really love seeing those connections come out.
And have you ever gained experience or support in an unconventional way? So we've spoken here a bit about the informal and the formal, but what about a sort of less conventional way, maybe?
I think it's all, again, boils down to, how open are you to approach people as well. So in my current role, what I do is I actually sometimes call the hiring managers and go and sit with them. What exactly do you need? What do you do? And sit with them. So we can't spend that much time with them, but at least going above and beyond, your roles, and to try and understand what the other person does. I think, that builds up on your own knowledge, and that you can leverage in your own roles. So I think just being out there and being open-minded to approach and talk to people, I think that would be, and that has been my way of getting knowingly or unknowingly mentorship.
I think projects are a great way to do that. Working on, I suppose, because you get exposure to different people that you might not in your day-to-day job. You get to learn different skills, influencing rather than having line management responsibilities, and maybe learning aspects, of different parts of the business that you wouldn't have otherwise. And I think then as a consequence of that, you can receive, feedback and advice and guidance for things that you wouldn't necessarily have got just in your sort of day-to-day role. So I think projects are a really good opportunity, and, take you out of your comfort zone. You learn something new, right?
Yeah, completely. I always think that when something makes you nervous, when you get the butterflies, you're growing. Yeah. But also what you say is such a good point, how you get sort of a cross interface, if you like, with different sections, different people, to as sort of not criticize, that's not the word, to help you to see where you should be going and where to learn.
And I think for some of the opportunities that I've had and roles that I've taken, I wouldn't have necessarily had those had I not done, other roles and things that were perhaps a little bit more diverse. I'm an accountant. Predominantly my career has been in finance, but I was asked to take a role to head up risk. I didn't really know anything about that at the time. And I think had I not had the opportunity to demonstrate, a certain skill set elsewhere, I wouldn't have been considered for that role. So, you never know what doors it's going to open. And it, we're in it for the long haul. This isn't, it's not a sprint, is it? It's a bit of a marathon.
Yeah, completely agree. And I guess thinking about it, maybe like flipping it, the conventional learning or mentorship, for me, my role was knowledge-based exam, theory-based exam. But, when I got onto the desk, having not really known much about stocks and bonds whatsoever, it did feel like a bit of a baptism of fire, in the first few months and maybe even up to like the first year. But really, I would say my manager there was my mentor. shadowing, learning through doing. There was a certain pressure that I quite enjoyed. You know, I have to engage myself here, and taking his lead. I guess he's my manager, but so he is my manager, and you know, he knows I'm new, but he really then became in my mind my mentor as well for that.
I think whenever approaching something unconventional, which is a bit hard to group when you're at a place as dynamic and fluid as StoneX, which is good, I think a little bit of delusion helps. I don't know about you guys, but whenever I am trying to do something different, I'm always thinking back to the times in my life where I have been completely delusional. Maybe like trying on an outfit that looked terrible on me, maybe trying a sport that I had no business trying. Like, I'm no good at paddle. I don't have any hand-eye coordination. I don't know what made me think I could try that sport. But then I think, why don't I just apply that delusion to my own career, right? Like, if I am brave enough to potentially hurt myself trying reformer Pilates, which is super dangerous, by the way. I have sprained an ankle doing that. But the first time I fell right off. And, you know, why don't I take that approach to challenges at work? You know, I mean, it's not going to physically hurt me, at least. I'm probably not going to leave a work challenge with a sprained ankle. So I should take that same leap of faith, that same delusion, be like, yeah, I can totally master this. And worst case, I don't, and I learn something about myself. You know, it's a lot better than the worst case with Pilates. Very scary sport.
And paddle, yeah,
It's so dangerous.
share that with you. I've got all the gear still and absolutely no idea.
It's really intense.
I really got ready for that one. You know,
I didn't
and
realize
equipped myself.
it is serious. It is not, I thought it was a light little.
It was like
just-
pickleball, like that's what everyone says. They put it in the same category. No, sorry. There's like they can come flying. It's like,
It could really hurt. Yeah, it's a scary sport. We should apply more of our, you know,
attitude,
our bravery into work instead of all these new sports they keep inventing. Because all these things didn't exist like 20 years ago, right? We didn't have paddle. Reformer wasn't that big. Somewhere along the line, we decided we need to make our exercise more extreme. And people do it. We do it, and we spend so much money doing it. And I think we should just bottle that attitude and be like, right, let's try that in our careers as well. A lot safer, a lot more organized, no injuries physically, mentally maybe. But, you know, probably.
Oh dear. I guess sort of turning to looking ahead, how do you hope that the workplace will change for women over the next 5 years? And what needs to happen to actually get there?
I mean, it's changed so much. I mean, I've been in this industry for probably too many decades to count. And, you know, there is a much better gender balance than there was. You know, when I started out, when I was in my 20s, it was very male dominated. And I was thinking about this in preparation for today. And I think in my early career, and, you know, because it was so male dominated, I thought the route to success and to fit in was almost to model male behaviour. And as I say that out loud, I think, how strange was it to think that that was the right thing to do? So I think now moving forward, it's about supporting women to be really authentic and, you know, bring themselves to work, be who we are, because trying to model some other behaviour is defeating the purpose of diversity. So, yeah, how we continue to support that growth, I think, you know, is important. But you can see that it is working. So, yeah, more to do, though.
I think, yeah, just replying to that, I've got some notes prepared and thinking about it myself. One of the things I've written down as a prompt is that obviously the stereotype maybe has existed that it's been a bit of a boys' club in the way this kind of industry might have been dominated, but I haven't necessarily experienced, and I'm so pleased to say that I haven't necessarily experienced that to be true for my career journey so far. And there are groups like Women of StoneX, and I'm also part of some external ones which are more relevant to securities, which is kind of my field. And it's just a pleasure to meet these women and have, you know, such uplifting conversations that aren't just sort of glossing over things and, you know, we're all happy for each other kind of thing, but still facing our day jobs something that might be not as positive or encouraging. But I've actually also made connections that are really relevant to my day job in terms of networking as well. So I think going forward, in 5 years or, you know, however long, hopefully sooner, that will continue to take shape, especially as the younger generations are coming in. Like going back to my mentee, she was female, and it's just, and there were quite a few girls actually, you know, on the programme, young women, I should say, and they are just full of confidence, and that Gen Z kind of vibe is quite refreshing in that sense. So they're just being themselves, and I hope to see that just continue, you know, past me being, you know, when I'm in my later stages of my career too.
I love the statement that we should be authentic and we should have been all along. I think one thing that surprised me, and I hope is part of the future as we evolve, is that surprisingly the things that you think are stereotypically female conversation, men are also very interested in. Like, for example, a couple of weeks ago, I think it was 3 weeks ago, I came into the office, I logged in to Bloomberg, and bond yields were just rising. They were steepening, and that was the talk of the day. And a couple people messaged me on Bloomberg, men and women, and the first thing they said to me was not what's going on with the bond market today. It was, did you hear what happened to the Beckhams? Yes. And that was so important. I was like, everyone, men, women, wanted to talk about what happened to the Beckhams. We also wanted to talk about what happened to the bond market. But it was also important to get this out of the way because Brooklyn Beckham wrote this like 6-page statement calling out his parents and cutting ties with them, saying, contact me only if you're going to contact me through a lawyer. It was just such good drama. And men and women were talking about it. And maybe that's part of the atmosphere changing, like there's more women. But also we forget that the men that we work with, you know, they interact with women all the time. Their partners, their kids, their friends. So they are having these conversations that we would have once deemed trivial. And being more casual and open about them instead of hiding them and saying, oh, I'm only going to be talking about really serious stuff or golf. It allows for men to join that conversation too, because everybody loves talking about celebrity gossip. That is not an opinion, that is a fact. So the fact that we can have more of these conversations is promising. I hope that as the workplace evolves, we feel more confident to have them because it doesn't affect our jobs, right? Having a silly opinion or an opinion that we think may not align with male-dominated society, that doesn't mean we're any less good at our jobs. You can do both things, and I think we're starting to appreciate that, especially on trading floors. I would never have imagined that conversation to have happened on a trading floor, maybe even 10 years ago, but I wasn't surprised at all that it happened that day. In fact, I was saying to people, I was like, do you want to talk about the Beckhams, or do you want to talk about bonds, or do you want to try and talk about both? Because we can make this really fun.
You know, Shriya, that's also largely your influence.
Yeah, I really want to talk about the Beckhams.
Over the course of the time that Shriya's been on the desk, the traders have become just very chatty, I guess.
About all of this stuff. We have every summer we talk about Love Island in detail. But this is the point I'm making: is they clearly watch the show. They clearly follow the Beckhams. This is just me encouraging that conversation, right? They would have loved to have it, but no one was encouraging them to have the conversation before. And this would have happened all throughout the decades, right? Men were participating in activities that they maybe weren't talking about with their friends or on the trading floor. But now that there is some diversity, we should take advantage of that, and we should talk about the Beckhams and Love Island more. That's my takeaway from this.
Well, because you're building a rapport and a team spirit, and you know, so it's important, and it doesn't really matter the topic that you're using. And you're right, because a man typically wouldn't have brought that up. But very keen to join in the conversation, right? Brilliant.
Yeah, it's really interesting because going back to that idea of like, I thought when I first started out, in order to be able to compete and to be up there, I had to be super serious. And that was sort of a line that I followed. But exactly what you said, having that confidence to bring in authenticity, yourselves, the fun part of things, actually sort of works the advantage massively.
You know, also, you know, taking charge of what you want to bring to the table rather than waiting for someone else to speak for you. for you. So approach things with full confidence, prepare yourself. I think that would bring that change in the workplace as well.
And I think it's a shift in, I guess, maybe gender culture, but also the generations. So a lot of it tracks. It just so happens I've been, doing a bit of research on the generations and going from like the boomers to Gen X, so Gen X is stereotypically, a true stereotype is that they can come across quite stoic because that's how they show that they're being really hardworking, and it's actually genuinely perhaps seen that you should have a work persona because that's professional. And then moving through millennial to Gen Z, authenticity is the new theme. It is what everybody in Gen Z and millennial wants from work, wants to align it with their personal goals, and that's that stereotype. So I just find it very interesting.
And the personal aspect, I think, is important to touch on because, maybe a bit of a generalist comment, but I still think women pick up the lion's share of life outside work, and the flexibility and support that an organisation gives its female staff to support them through, having children and, coming back to work, and that sort of juggling with childcare or having, elderly parents or other dependents. Typically, it's the woman in the relationship that is going to pick up, most of that commitment outside of work. And I think ultimately you want to end up in a position where you've got a very diverse senior leadership level. And it's how do we make sure that we continue to get women, those seats as they progress through their career. And it's not just that. We then go through the menopause, that's a whole other thing. But, right. But, it's...
it's reality as well. It happens. Yeah.
Right. So, be authentic. We are all human beings at the end of the day, and support people on that journey so that we retain the talent, all the investment that we put in, early on, we get to keep that as they progress.
Moving this forward a little bit, what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received or wished that you'd been told early in your career? And I think mine would have been just be yourself. As we've just talked about, I think that would have saved me quite a lot of trauma and not problems, but difficulties with myself and facing the career path ahead. But what about you guys?
Mine was like he was my teacher. He said, don't be a doormat.
Okay.
People would clean the feet and walk off. So please don't be a doormat. And the second piece of advice, which so that I keep in my mind all the time, and then always carry a diary with you. So traditional, it sounds very traditional, orthodox nowadays diaries. But yes, the more I write, it clears my mind. So I used to make always fun of someone who always used to carry a diary. I'm like, why do you carry? Can you not have everything in your head? He said, no, I need to write it down to just memorize it. And till date, it's been now 15 years or so, always have a diary.
I always get stressed when a waiter takes my order and they've not written it down.
Yes.
I'm just repeat it back. I'm scared.
So whatever, diary or nowadays notepad or iPads, whatever, just keep something in hand so that you don't miss the important information.
I have one, and I also have my my diary that has the dates on, because I just can't, it's not real to me if it's in my phone calendar. I don't know what that's about. I don't know if it's because I'm left-handed or what's going on, but I have the physical as well of both versions, because I would, completely agree with that piece of advice, and it works for me. So
Something as well. My takeaway for today, I'm buying a diary.
I was once told when I was quite heavily pregnant before I had my son by a colleague, and she said, "Oh, do you know what you're having?" And I said, "A boy." And she said, "My only advice is treat him like a dog." And I was absolutely mortified. Anyway, now fast forward, my son is 17, and I totally understand where she was coming from, because she said, feed them often, walk them regularly, and there'll be no trouble at all. So now I understand. But on a more work-related, like more serious note, the best advice was, you don't need to be so hard on yourself. Like, it's okay to give yourself a break. And I think, generally women put an awful lot of pressure on ourselves to try and succeed. And sometimes it's okay to be, we're good enough. So, sometimes we can give ourselves a bit of a break.
Yeah. I like that one. I think a piece of advice that sticks out to me is that you are your own best advocate. And what I mean by that is, sometimes maybe society encourages women to leverage others for help. We ask our mentors, our bosses, our peers to help us get onto that project, to get that next promotion. We ask for advice on how to get that pay rise, etc. But sometimes the best thing you can do is just be your own advocate, aggressively so, because nobody else has as much skin in the game as you do for yourself in your own career. No one, not your partner, not your friends, not your family. So you're better off owning that and thinking, what result do I want from this conversation, from this point in my career, from whatever, and fully seeing it through to the end. It makes a big difference just thinking of, I am what's stopping me from getting what I want. I mean, there may be other barriers, but I am what's stopping me in that first step. So if I hesitate, if I'm too nervous to ask something, I always think, it's really up to me. No one's going to do it for me. I have to advocate for myself.
I love that. So mine would be something that I heard from a lady who I've never met. Her name's Evie Pompouras. She used to be a special agent and part of Barack Obama and the Obama family sort of protection unit. And she's now a speaker, public speaker, and she addresses imposter syndrome. And it's something that I think we've spoken about authenticity already, and it's come up a little bit informally, but she actively rejects the term, which is interesting considering how perfectly, in a nutshell, it can sum up our feelings of insecurities. And yeah, it perfectly sort of puts it, really. But she rejects it because, and actually similar to what Shriya just said in a way, is that she attributes her success to her ignorance and naivety. And therefore she goes for things and has always gone for things. Her imposter syndrome doesn't let it stop her. She doesn't listen to her imposter syndrome. And she then tells herself, or she tries to tell herself, that she has earned where she is. So there is also an argument that imposter syndrome was, created for women specifically. I don't know if anyone else has heard that, but just because I guess maybe in male-dominated environments we might feel some insecurities a bit more, and the way that we have quite an emotionally intelligent way to express ourselves, it's nice to have a term to talk about it. But there is also an argument, even though it's, I guess it exists, that maybe you shouldn't perpetuate it by speaking about it too much. So it's something I try to remind myself. I'm working on it. At this point in my career, I guess I felt it. So it's really stuck with me, and it was quite a fresh take to it.
Definitely. Yeah, I feel with the whole imposter syndrome, it's something that acknowledging it, I think, does help in the sense that it makes you realise how far you've come. I was doing BBC Newsnight with an analyst who I've looked up to for many, many years, and I was on a panel with him, and I found that was my moment of, oh gosh, should I be here? Should I not be here? That could have been my imposter syndrome moment. And recognising it also helped me feel that actually you've achieved a lot to get here. Get the butterflies, make yourself nervous. You're growing. But yeah, so it does help to acknowledge it exists, but also to look past it. What skill or mindset have you developed outside of work that's had the biggest impact on your career?
Being social and, being surrounded, by people all the time, I think that has resonated with me at workplace as well. That has helped me build relationship at work, building rapport, with the peers, colleagues, subordinates, seniors, managers. So I think that is something that has come from home to workplace.
Yeah. That's a very good one as well. It's a very good one to point out, because perhaps it's something that you might do naturally, but actually it's such an important skill.
I think back on that Pilates example, I do try and challenge myself outside of work. I hope actually more than or to the same amount that I do at work. So I'm always trying to learn new things. So Pilates is a good example. I taught myself how to knit about 10 years ago, and that's a less physically draining example of trying something new that's challenging, and it's not easy. The first few times you do it, you have knit the most disgusting scarf and you're ashamed of yourself and you just want to cry. I guess you could use the scarf to dab your tears, but it's one of those things where perseverance teaches you to get better and better. And I do that for physical activities as well. So Pilates, I now feel confident I can handle any Pilates class. I'm constantly trying to improve my skiing. Technically, I'm like, that's where you're just throwing yourself off a mountain, but you get better at doing that each time. It's an insane concept. But again, similar to work, you're just like, yeah, well, here's a mountain. What's the worst that can happen? I can die. Well, it'll be fun. So yeah, I think a combination of challenging myself physically and then also mentally and just keeping those skills sharp. And then it also helps you fully forget about work, which I think is important, right? You need some activities where you're like, I've forgotten what a bad day I had at work because I've just knit the most abysmal sock. Like, I'm just so focused on how bad this has gone for me that I can't even think about how I messed up that trade at work. And it's nice to be able to distract yourself with something else that's gone wrong. So that's where the new things come in.
That's where skiing comes in for me.
Which one is bad, work or sock?
When you're standing on top of a mountain, it's the same feeling. You're just like, do I care about work or am I going to live?
Think about, I forgot to send that email or put my out of office. It's like, don't die, don't die.
Yeah, you're like, just make it down. Try and make it down cleanly, but just make it down in one piece. Maybe 2 pieces. Try not to get to 3 pieces. Like, it's a great way to forget about work.
So I guess something maybe on the flip side, I've just tried to teach myself to relax. So every few weeks, I will have what I call a day to rot, which is just that there's no schedule for the Saturday. There's no, so I'm quite a routine, orientated, disciplined person by nature, and it's always, I guess, helped me in the workplace as well. But preventing burnout is just really, really, really important for me because I can go there. I can check emails at weekends, and I shouldn't probably say that, but, that's just my natural inclination, to be honest. So since, being in this role, I most definitely have tried to teach myself, and it's going quite well. It's actually easier than I thought it would be, where I can stay in bed until 9 kind of thing on a Saturday every so often. So I would class that as not doing anything has been important to me.
Yeah. Our minds are always working, so it's really important to just not do anything. And that's why I also tell my kids, it's good to be bored. Yeah, they say, oh, what do I do? If you're not watching iPad, they're bored. It's good to be bored, because when you're bored, you would pick up something different apart from that gadget. So you build on, you can find ways how to not get bored.
Yeah, to be bored. Completely. And just finally, what's a decision that didn't make you look smart at the time, but actually turned out to be essential to your growth?
Oh, I've got a good one. It's not work related. So during the pandemic, I was very sad because, my family was in the States. I couldn't see any friends. So I impulsively bought a kitten. And I've always loved cats, but I didn't think I could have a cat because I was living in a flat at the time, and it was quite high up, and it wasn't a cat environment. But I was like, this pandemic sucks. Like, I need to do something. I'm so sad. Bought a kitten. The kitten, his name is Bumble. He destroyed almost every possession that I had. He was chewing cables, chewing shoes, climbing up curtains, not climbing down the curtains, just climbing up them, and then screaming at you. And that was the decision where I was like, what am I doing? Like I'm such a controlled person. I like everything exactly how it is. I'm very structured. I will, if my clothes are in the wrong place, I'll get very stressed out. This taught me how to accept chaos. And that's necessary in any job, especially trading. You have to accept there's going to be things you can't control. There's going to be times when the market moves and it's illogical. It's how you react to the chaos. And before getting this kitten in my small apartment during the pandemic, I'd never had the exposure to managing chaos before. Everything was just pristine and perfect and it was fine. But all of a sudden I had to be like, okay, I have to manage all of this and the cat's throwing up. Okay, that's fine. We have to, like, you just get on with it and it teaches you multitasking. I imagine it's similar to having small kids, except the kitten doesn't stop throwing up and destroying your things. But it was a good life lesson in that you have to accept chaos, and mastering that and being able to multitask around that makes you better at your job.
And I would just like to attest that Bumble is the best thing in...
the kitten is still with you.
I hear on a daily basis about how Bumble is not a stupid decision. Bumble is everything. And we all now love Bumble. Probably never be equally as much as Shriya, but we all now love Bumble too.
Everyone loves. He's the team cat.
Yes.
You're absolutely right. Kids is kind of the same, you know, throwing up and wrecking your stuff. That carries on for quite a few years. But you're right, it does teach us how to not be in control of everything. And I think that is actually really important. I think it took me a long time to learn to be okay and comfortable with not being able to control everything.
Yeah, whenever my daughters are saying, can I have a pet? My husband says, I've got two.
No, but that's a really, really great point to end on, that, you know, we can't control everything, and that is fine. Thanks very much for watching At the Table by Women of StoneX. For more videos like this, please do like and subscribe.